I'm going to start recording just for posterity's sake, and just to ensure that anybody that was not able to join the Zoom call will be able to, watch it later. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tobiloba Akibo, and I'm going to be moderating this session today. Today we have Wole Ogunsajo, who is going to be talking to us about his work. He's going to be talking to us about his work in Ikogosi Warm Spring and also as a Nigerian landscape architect who has a focus on recreational landscapes. Wole brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the revitalization of Nigerian tourism landscapes, including parks, gardens, and landscape development. He's passionately committed to transforming Nigeria's natural and cultural spaces with a keen interest in breathing new life into Nigeria's degraded farm settlement landscapes. He combines ecological sensitivity with innovative design strategies to create sustainable, inviting outdoor environments that foster community, tourism, and local development. A registered member of the Society of Landscape Architects in Nigeria, Wole is a dedicated advocate for landscape architecture as a tool for national revitalization and cultural preservation. Currently pursuing his PhD at the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, FUNAB, he continues to expand his research on sustainable landscape practices, focusing on projects that support Nigeria's ecological resilience and tourism appeal. Today, he joins us to share insights from his journey and discuss impactful strategies to enhance and rejuvenate Nigeria's tourism landscapes. Please let us welcome Wole as he starts his presentation.
Thank you so much, Tobiloba. I'm very, very grateful. Can we have the slides up, please? All right. Okay. So today I'll be speaking on revitalizing Nigeria's tourism landscape. So before we move ahead, let us just see the agenda for today so that we can know what to expect from today's presentation. The slide before this one, please. The agenda. Okay. So the agenda for today's presentation is number one, we look at introduction. And of course, we look at the philosophy, the philosophy of tourism, after which we're going to look at the statistics. We look at some definitions, and then we look at tourism as a whole. And then we'll see basic types of tourism and then impacts of tourism. And then specifically, we are going to look at the landscapes of tourism. Then before we now go ahead to examine revitalizing Nigeria's tourism landscape, then before we move to our conclusion. The next slide, please. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. We can hear you. Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So first of all, we are going to be looking at first at the philosophy of tourism. Now, just like many other academic disciplines, first of all, when you're engaging in one type of study or the other, the first thing you have to look at is the philosophy. Once you look at the fundamental nature of tourism, the belief system, the ideology, and also the school of thought. So there are key aspects of tourism philosophy that guides us, landscape architects and stakeholders, that will enable us to design and promote responsible, sustainable, and culturally sensitive tourism practices. Number one is the hospitality. This emphasizes on the warmth, the welcome, the respect for guests. And also we have to look at the cultural exchange. This has to do with encouraging cross-cultural understanding and appreciation. Number three, we want to look at the sustainability, which has to do with balancing the economic, social, and environmental needs of a particular place. And then the authenticity, which has to do with preserving local heritage and authenticity. And then we look at number five, which is the responsibility, which has to do with recognizing tourism impact on communities and environment. And then the sixth philosophy that we're going to be looking at is the fair distribution of benefits and then of resources. Then the last one is stewardship, protecting and preserving resources. Now, this has to do with more of, it has a link to sustainability. Just like we all know, we're not using the resources for ourselves alone. We are also preserving it for the future generations. So these 7 key aspects of tourism philosophy will guide us as landscape architects on how to revitalize landscapes. All right, the next slide, please. Okay, so let me start by sharing this quote from Jack Hanna. It says that the world is the true classroom. Now, the most rewarding and important type of learning is through experience, seeing something with our own eyes. Just like a quote that says that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I could also say that a video, when you see something visually, is much more than, it's worth more than 1,000,000 words. So when you go to see something, it's worth more than 1,000,000 words when you see it face to face. That is just explaining what Jacana says. All right, the next slide, please. All right, so let's look at the introduction to our presentation. Now, across the globe, tourism has evolved to become one of the world's fastest growing industries and a major foreign exchange and employment generation for many countries. Now, specifically, when we now look at Nigeria as a whole, with our endowed geographical landscape, which comprises of the coastal beaches we have, the mountains, the historical monuments, the wildlife, the UNESCO World Heritage Site that has been approved, we know of two, that is the Oshogbo Grove and the Soko cultural landscape, and of course, our diverse culture. This presentation should be able to spur this interest in us. So by this, we should be able to create a niche in global tourism. With all this geographical landscape I've mentioned, we should be able to create a niche in global tourism. The next slide. All right, so let's look at some statistics because this would also help us, you know, in further expanding our scope. Now, according to a 2017 tourism report by the World Economic Forum, travel and tourism contributes about 2% to Nigeria's GDP compared to other African nations, such as Seychelles, Cape Verde, Mauritius, where their travel and tourism industry has been better harnessed, contributing about 20%, 17%, and 12% respectively to GDP. Now imagine comparing that to Nigeria as at 2017, 2%, and a country like Seychelles is contributing 20%. Now, I now took this research a little further to know what's happening. I took my report from the statistical research department, which says that the contribution of travel and tourism to GDP in Nigeria as of 2019 was 4.5. It rose from 2% in 2017 to 4.5. And then it declined to 2.8% in 2020. Then before it increased again to 3.6 in 2021 and 2022. Now, even with that, we are still not getting the best out of Nigeria. Comparing it to a country like Seychelles, Cape Verde, and Mauritius, who are contributing far ahead of us, looking at the fact that they say Nigeria is the giant of Africa. And then we are nowhere to be found when it comes to the tourism industry. It's such a shame to us. The next slide. The next slide. All right, so let me just do a bit of definitions here so that we just understand a little bit or just to refresh our memory. Tourism is a social, cultural, and economic phenomenon which entails the movement of people to countries or places outside their usual environment for personal or business or professional purposes. Now, these people are usually called visitors, which may be either tourists or excursionists. Now, the United Nations World Tourism Organization defines tourists as people who travel to and stay in place outside their usual environment for not more than one consecutive year, either for leisure, for business, and other purposes not related to the exercise of an activity remunerated from within the place visited. The next slide. These are just foundational things that we just need to do. Okay, the next slide, please. All right, so now specifically now, let's now look at tourism in Nigeria. Now, Nigeria has a wide variety of tourist attractions, including beaches. Of course, we have a quite number of them in Lagos, and wildlife, the Yankari Game Reserve, waterfalls. We have one of them in Ekiti State. In fact, few of them in Ekiti State, and so many natural areas. Now, my second point here, which I had to just highlight, I said that tourism can be a way to redefine Nigeria. Now, whether we like it or not, even on the international scene, Nigeria has a bad name already. But I feel that we can use tourism to redefine Nigeria as a whole. Now we know of countries like Dubai. People travel to Dubai now just because of the advancements. Now, but then here in Nigeria, we have so many of these natural attractions that we can redevelop, that we can regenerate, just to be able to tell the whole world that come, Nigeria is a great place to go to. Nigeria is a great place to go and feel. So I feel that tourism that we're discussing today is a means by which we can redefine Nigeria as a whole, even on the global scene. The next slide, please. The next slide. All right. Okay. So I want to take us through the basic types of tourism because there are quite a number of them, so that we can be aware. Number one, we have the nature tourism. This has to do with type of tourism that has to do with visiting natural areas. You want to see the fauna, the flora, etc., etc. We have the ecotourism, which is ecological tourism. This type of tourism that aims to conserve the environment. An example of this is that which is at Ikogosi Warm Spring Resort. We have the heritage tourism. You want to travel to a place where you want to experience their artifacts, you want to experience the activities, you want to know the stories and the people of that place. This is heritage tourism. And then you want to and then the leisure tourism. I remember last week, about 2 weeks ago, Dapo was telling us about the golf lake, the golf, what do you call it, what do you call it? What's that is place again? At
Lakwe.
Lekki. Lakwe, thank you. At Lakwe. So that place alone is a natural, is an example of a leisure tourism center. And of course, we have that of the agro-tourism. Now, this is just agriculture plus tourism. You want to visit a farm center, not just for the purpose of farming, but you want to experience the lifestyle. You want to see how farming is being done, and you want to stay there. You want to see how things are being done. It's a type of tourism, which I know we can do here in Nigeria. And of course, we have the beach tourism. Oh, you want to visit, what the name of this, Local Beach. We have quite a number of them here in Lagos, beach tourism. And then the cultural tourism. This has to do with, involves learning experiences with cultural attractions, visit to museums, historical sites, festivals, etc., etc. And then we have the religious tourism. Now, this has to do with pilgrimage to Jerusalem. As Muslims, maybe to Mecca, you know. Even in Nigeria, we have the Redemption City. You want to see how religious is being practiced, like that. And of course, we have the sustainable tourism, we have the rural tourism, and of course, we have the wildlife tourism. Just like I said, we have the game, which has to do with the games reserve, and then we have the geotourism. Now, this geotourism is relatively new. Now, is the kind of tourism that focuses on geological attractions. You want to see how a place has evolved over time. You want to go and witness how it is. That is geotourism. So these are the basic types. We have much more than this, but just because of this presentation, I had to limit it to this 12. So the next slide. All right, so let's look at the impacts of tourism. Number one, tourism activities can impact the economy of Nigeria, as well as the local economy of the destination, whether as a whole, as a country, whether in a state, Ekiti State, Oshogbo Grove, it has a way of impacting the local economy. And of course, the scope of tourism activity is so wide and varied that it cannot be restricted to any particular field of activity. And then tourism has vast potential to bring about changes in Nigeria's economic, environmental, social, societal, and cultural edifice. I mentioned that when I was explaining the fact that we can use tourism to, to revitalize, to regenerate, our name as a country. And of course, tourism can contribute to the economy through the revenue generation and shares responsibility with the government, which has to do with poverty alleviation, create opportunities for job placement, protect the environment, and of course, conserve natural ecosystems and biodiversity. The next slide. Okay, so we are getting there gradually now. So now we want to look at the landscapes of tourism. Now here I said landscape is central to sightseeing and tourism. Without landscape, there may not be tourism. And that's the honest truth. Anybody who is visiting tourist, a tourism destination, the first thing is looking out for is what are the things I'm going there to see? What are the landscape features? What are the things I'm going to see? Is it the mountains? Is it the waterfall? These are the things that is expected from any tourist or any visitor. So one thing we have to realize is that landscape is central to sightseeing and tourism. And of course, we have to realize that this tourism is based on the use of natural resources involving scenery, the topography, the water features, the vegetation, and the wildlife. All these are features that people want to see, and they are all embedded in the landscape. So even as landscape architects, we have a whole lot of role to play in landscape revitalization of a tourist destination. And of course, just like I've said, let me just repeat it again. Landscape is central to the visitor's tourism experience. It is the landscape features that attract visitors to a tourism destination. People want to see, what am I going there to see? They want to know what I'm going there to see. For example, at the Kogosi Warm Spring, we tell them, oh, you are coming to see the confluence of warm and cold spring in the world, which is the only one that we have. So there are other places like that they want to see. You want to go to Yankari Games Reserve now, for example. You want to go and see animals, and these are landscape features, which is embedded both in the landscape. So we have a whole lot to play. So without landscape, there may not be tourism. We have to understand that fact. The next slide. All right. Now, once we look at revitalizing Nigeria's tourism landscape, the things we need to know, which is the highlight of this presentation. Now, if at all we want to revitalize our tourism landscape in Nigeria, there's some five basic components that we have to know. Number one, attraction. Two, accessibility. Number three, the accommodation. Number four, the amenities. And number five, the activities. These five basic or vital components are very, very important to us. We have to make sure that these things are ringing bells in our heads as landscape architects, and they must be reflected in our design process, and of course, in the conclusion as well. The next slide, we'll look at each one after the other. The attraction. Now, I said here that tourism activity starts with the attractions. Attraction is one of the most important components that attract people to travel from one place to another and influence all other components. They can make or break a destination. I'll use Ikogosi as an example. Ikogosi has the only confluence of warm and cold spring in the world. So when people come around to our resort, they say, oh, the first thing they want to see is the warm and cold spring. That is the main attraction. Although we have other attractions, we have the hills, we have the swimming pools, but that is the basic, that is the attraction. That is what is pulling them to the resort. So we have to take note of that, the attraction. And I said that the ultimate motive of any tourist is to experience the attraction. Without attractions, there may not be tourism. So we have to notice that. Even though if we don't have the natural landscape feature, you know, depicting attraction as a whole, we can create one. Even though if the place doesn't even have one, we can create one as a landscape architect. It might be a waterfall, it can be a fountain. Create one, something that people will want to see first when they get to a tourism destination. Number two, which has to do with the next slide. Let's go to the next slide. It has to do with the accessibility. Now you want to know, how do I get to this place? Like, for example, if you're going to Ikogosi, I'm using Ikogosi as an example because, of course, I've been a part of the revitalization. So I could talk from experience. People want to know, how do I get to a place? How when I leave Lagos, how do I get to Kogos? How do I get to Ekiti State? So accessibility is very, very important, and also accommodation. And just like I said, accessibility and accommodation facilitate this experience. So any traveler choosing to visit any destination would first of all look out for accommodation. So it is very, very important. So the accessibility, how to get to the tourism destination. Then the next slide, please. The next slide. All right, so this has to do with the accommodation properly. Now, I would like to say this. When someone is visiting a tourism destination, many times you are not just going there to just spend a day and leave. Many times you go there, spend 2 days, spend 3 days. You want to enjoy the ecosystem. You want to enjoy biodiversity. So many times you don't have to just spend a day. You want to lodge, and then when you leave a place, we are already used to the concrete type of structure. Now people want to feel something different. People want to feel something natural. So just like I said here, I said ecolodge is a sustainable and a suitable type of accommodation for any tourism destination. So whenever we are coming up with our designs for the accommodations for any tourism destination, I think Ecolodge should be an ideal type of accommodation that we have to put in our design process. It's very, very fundamental, not the concrete type. Unfortunately, we don't have this at Ikogosi, but I know with time we could still have something like this. So it is very, very important for us. The Ecolodge is very sustainable and is a suitable type of accommodation. So we have to encourage this Ecolodge in our design of tourism destination. And I said it is an establishment that welcomes tourists and vacationers in a natural park. It is a habitat that integrates into nature in a harmonious way and whose impact on the environment is almost minimal. And of course, even constructing an eco lodge will be far cheaper than we have when constructing the concrete structures, of course, with bricks and the likes. The next slide, please. Okay, so here is the amenities. This is the four key vital components in the revitalization. I said amenities are those facilities that complement the attractions. The high quality amenities are an essential aid to every tourism destination. For example, the restaurant, people who wants to eat, you don't expect them maybe to bring the food they will eat for 3 days with them. They would expect a restaurant. There are some other amenities you want to provide for them, like swimming pool, like shopping center, etc., etc. So there are many activities, not limited to this alone. So these are some of the vital components that we have to ensure when designing or revitalizing a tourism destination. It's very, very important. We need to incorporate these amenities in our design process. And I said that this infrastructure development is very vital for developing a tourism destination to advance the tourist living conditions. People want to see things, they want to explore things, the dining experience, which they can get in the restaurant. They want to experience the feel of water, which they can get in the swimming pool, the shopping center. I remember in one of the articles I read on LinkedIn one time, someone said that tourists they are shoppers, that they like shopping. When you visit a place, you want to buy things. And that is the reasons why we have to incorporate the shopping center of a thing inside the design process so that people can go there, let them buy one or two things, most especially the locally made materials. It's very, very important because you want to showcase something. Like somebody who is going to a social group, for example, you want them to see some of the things they've learned. Maybe it's going to be a wristband, so forth. So we have to understand that fact. So they are shoppers. Tourists are shoppers. So some of all these amenities are things we must incorporate in the infrastructure development of a tourism destination. The next slide, please. Now, this is the final one, which has to do with the activities. There are there are two key um, ingredients here, which are very, very important. Number one is the attraction and the activities. Now, if you visit a tourism destination, you are not just going there to just enjoy or sit down, relax, enjoy the lush green lawns, see biodiversity. There are some certain things that you would like to do. So just like I said in my first point here, I said attractions are often assisted by various activities that enhance the tourist experience because everything is all about the experience. People want to experience where they are going to. So these activities are very, very, very fundamental. And I said that activities are events in which tourists participate in for various purposes. Activities like hiking, which of course you can get at Ikogosi. Don't mind me, I'm always making reference to Ikogosi Warm Spring Resort. Mountaineering, which of course, if you go to Obudu Cattle Ranch, is it Obudu Mountain Resort now? These are things you get there. You want to engage in camping, bird watching, golfing, sightseeing, boating, sport fishing, horseback riding, safari, which of course we get in a games reserve, etc., etc. People want to experience activities. So even as landscape architects, we must have that consciousness, even in our design process, that come, this tourism destination that I'm revitalizing, which activities am I creating? What are the things that I want to put here? Because you're not just doing something just for yourself. You want Now you've created an eco lodge for them that they're going to stay for the night. What else do you want them to experience? They're spending 3 days, spending 4 days. So what activities are you designing for them? So it's very, very important. So it is not limited to this. There are much more than this. So but then we must be able to create all these activities in our design process. The next slide. All right. Okay. So I just decided to just put this here. You know, my people are not paying me for this, but then just like my seniors have done, let me just do a little advertisement for Ikogosi Warm Spring Resort. I had the opportunity of leading the team, in charge of the landscape revitalization of Ikogosi Warm Spring Resort. So I'm just sharing this slide alone. So I said Ikogosi Warm Spring Resort is and conference center has the only conference of warm and cold spring in the world. So there is no other place in the world where that exists anywhere. And of course, it is an ecotourism destination and a MICE tourism destination. Now, this MICE tourism, I didn't include it earlier. This has to do with the meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. That is the full meaning of MICE. Because we have a conference hall, we have an event center where you can, for example, you feel like taking all your family members or maybe from your office, you want to go and recreate over there. We have the halls to accommodate you for that. So its main attraction basically is warm and cold spring. Although there are many activities that is still coming up, so many attractions that is still on the way, it's a process. It's a process. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I would like to welcome feedback. Okay. There's still one more slide. There's still one more slide, please. There's still one more slide. Let me go to the conclusion. All right. Now, so I said here, as my conclusion, I said one of the most effective ways to revitalize tourism destination landscapes in Nigeria is by promoting local attractions and experiences. When we look through Nigeria, some of all these attractions are in rural areas. We must be ready to promote them, these local attractions and experiences. Now, whether it is historical sites, we thank God for a place like Oshogbo Grove, which is now on the world map, you know, and of course we know it as a cultural heritage site. And of course, we know, of course, and of course, the natural beauty or cultural experiences. Now, this main attraction draw tourists. So it is very, very important that we note that. And then I concluded by saying that Nigeria is blessed with a rich cultural heritage and natural attraction. It has the potential to be the leading tourism destination in Africa. That is the truth. Because of all this that I've mentioned earlier, we can be the leading tourism destination in Africa. That can only happen that if we plan them well, we develop them well, and we manage them properly. All these attractions have the potential to be sustainable. And all these things lies in our hands as a landscape architect. I believe that with these few points of mine, I believe I've been able to spur our interest in tourism landscape revitalization. And I believe that even as we continue to do this, Nigeria will be great with our inputs in them. Thank you. Over to you, Toby.
Thank you very much, Wole. And this is a very, very interesting topic and presentation. And one key thing I actually wanted to, note is that it's very important because when you're doing tourism and sustainable tourism, really, you have to also think about the community that is around a lot of these tourist sites. You want to also make
Yeah.
sure that, there's a socioeconomic balance, which is why the eco lodge is a very interesting and very great one to have, especially at tourist centers, because it focuses really on getting materials that are already residing in that community. So you're not going out of your way really, or too much out of your way to, to build these ecologies. So it basically it
Yeah.
focuses on sustainability, and it also focuses on socioeconomic power. So thank you so much for this presentation. And I think that, if we have any questions, any comments, for Wole, again, the importance of us having these seminars, these webinars really is to touch on the practicality and the practicable aspects of the theory of landscape architecture. Our professor is on the call here, Professor Najejumo. He's spoken a lot about the theory of landscape architecture, and we need to actually see a lot of this theory in practice, which is why we started with Seun Gbogboade's presentation on energy costs. We also talked about communal spaces and shared spaces with Dapo. And now we are looking at the tourism, especially like sustainable tourism aspect of and how like landscape architects, spur and move these conversations forward. So if you have any questions, if you have questions and you don't want to speak, you can add it to the comments to the chat box, and I can read it out for you. If you want to unmute yourself, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Hi, Olive.
Yeah.
Fantastic presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Dapo.
So, I think I'm just going to ask this question generally. How would you describe the design or the revitalization efforts for a tourist facility like Ikogosi? Uh, what are the challenges that you experienced, and what do you think would be a good takeaway for the rest of us who may be interested in learning from you and revitalizing or designing tourist facilities? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dapo, for that question. Uh, the truth of the matter is, many of all these our local attractions, just like the word local attractions, they are all in rural areas. Now, and based on my own experience, first of all, you are moving to a rural environment. You are going to be meeting a different set of people, interacting with a different set of people. I'm going to start with that because you are the one who carries the idea. So as soon as you get there, you don't expect somebody else to quickly believe in what you are bringing. But somebody who is higher than you, who feels, oh, this person is sound, which is one of the things that I'm fortunately to have, in our chairman. You know, all of my ideas, when I bring it to the table, they'll be like, oh, this is good, this is good. Now, but then communicating your ideas to the local people can be a challenge. So it's something that you, first of all, have to take note. Communicating your ideas with them and then relating it to them. And because of the fact that you are redeveloping a place, you have to spend more time with them in terms of communication. And just like I said earlier, you are the expert. You are the one who has the idea, who has all the key components, blah, 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 blah. You've done the design. So, but then communicating that idea to the local populace is, is a challenge. So let me just stop on that for now.
Thanks, Wole.
Thank you very much, Wally, for your response. And I think that I can add a bit more to that conversation. And I think that in terms of generally, in terms of challenges, I think that it's very important that we as landscape architects, don't see ourselves as the end all be all know all of some of these practices. A lot of it is us even learning from the communities, because one key thing is tourism is also sustainable tourism is also about conservation. So it's like,
Yes,
how are you learning from what the community has practiced over the years? So I think that it's
yes,
very, very important that, we keep that also in mind as designers, as architects, as landscape architects, that, you know, we are coming from a place of, trying to learn and understand, what the community has been safeguarding and has been practicing for years. So I think that that's a very important, place
yes.
to look at it also and to come from. Yes, thank you very much. So do we have anybody that has any other question, any comments, for Wale? And just generally, what, even as, I mean, there are a lot of landscape architects in this call. So it's like, what's your own experience, doing some of this sustainable tourism work? If you have some of that experience, what is your take on how we as landscape architects should practice our work? So if you have any comments, yeah, it'd be nice to hear. Okay, I'm not hearing from anybody, and so I think that, I mean, what that says to us is that, yeah, we're among friends. And I mean, it's good to know that there's really no questions and we really understand everything that we've um talked about today. We're looking forward to more presentations from other landscape architects. In the next 2 weeks, we have Femi Olarinwaju, who is going to be sharing with us some of his experience as a landscape architect in historic preservation and cultural landscapes. We're looking forward to that also. And as always, we want to thank Omar Gardens and Architecture and Urbanism Hub of University of Lagos for sponsoring and helping us, you know, manage and make sure that these webinars take place. Thank you very much for everybody that has joined, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in the next 2 weeks. At this point, if we don't have any comments or questions, have a very lovely evening and see you very soon. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.